I stood in the snowbound forest, hands trembling as I opened Mark's last letter, only to realize survival was just the beginning. In the final photograph, a shadowed man in a hat watched me from the darkness. And on the anonymous note, a single chilling line. The game has only just begun. Think this is just another family tragedy? You're wrong. Subscribe now to witness more shocking stories and haunting truths only on our channel. Glacier Lake, British Columbia, January 17, 2001. The lake is a harsh slab of iron beneath a sky that never settles, a place where winter hides the world. And only the bravest try to see through the mist. Snow falls in a hush so thick, it feels like the earth is being covered up for good. The air is sharp enough to draw blood, and the lake itself is a dead thing. Silent, unyielding secrets locked beneath a skin of ice. On the shore, the camera moves through driftwood and stones glazed with frost. Everything numbed by cold except the ache that clings to the scene. There, trapped in the ice near the old wooden dock, is a battered aluminum rowboat. The rental number is mostly scraped off the blue rope, frayed and stained, tied off like a hurried afterthought. No one is in it. The boat rocks with the wind alone, as if waiting for its story to be finished. A woman's voice is heard, distant but intimate. She called that morning, you know. Olivia said they wanted to watch the Eagles, just a quick trip out. Nothing risky. She promised they'd be back by dinner. Snapshots flicker across the screen. Olivia's wild laugh, her hair tucked into Mark's jacket collar. Mark himself mugging for the camera, eyes half closed against the light, the two of them standing arm in arm on the porch of a rented cabin. They look young enough to believe winter could be conquered by love alone. A newscaster's voice overlays the images, brittle and brisk. The search for 26-year-old Olivia Carter and 28-year-old Mark Bishop continues this morning on Glacier Lake. The couple's vehicle was found at the lakeside parking lot. Their rented boat has not yet been located. The camera pans over flashing blue and red lights, uniforms, combing the bank dogs, straining at their leads, volunteers wrapped in blankets and hope. The lake sits in the background, mute, daring anyone to ask what really happened. A mother stands in the snow, clinging to a paper cup of coffee, her face pale with something that isn't cold. Ruth Carter's voice trembles. I told her not to go out if the weather was changing. She just laughed, said she needed to breathe. Her hands are red and shaking, her eyes swollen with hope and dread. Mark's older brother Ethan stands apart, shoulders hunched. He called that morning, made a stupid joke about the proposal. He was always the joker. He sounded so alive. His voice fades as he turns to stare across the ice, as if willing Mark to walk back through the fog. The police chief, face set like stone, gives a statement. We have no evidence of foul play. The storm worsened quickly. Visibility was poor. In these conditions, survival time in the water is minimal. In the background, William Carter. Olivia's father shouts, his words slurred by grief. Don't stop. You don't stop looking for her. His face crumples, a man fighting the cold and the knowledge that sometimes the world gives up before a father can. Footage cuts to the search. A dog noses through reeds coated in ice. Men and women in orange vests dig through snowbanks, voices raised again and again, calling names that vanish into white. The news cameras catch faces twisted in hope, then in pain, then in exhaustion. Ruth pours coffee for strangers. Ethan hovers over a map. William stands in front of the camera, holding Olivia's picture with a grip that will not release. Night falls. The lights of the search party flicker and disappear. The volunteers go home. Only the lake remains, swallowing sound, erasing footprints. The official statement scrolls across images of the empty boat, Olivia's scarf knotted to the oarlock, a water bottle still caught under the seat. Given the passage of time and extreme conditions, we must conclude that Olivia Carter and Mark Bishop drowned in Glacier Lake. The case is now considered closed. Ruth's voice comes back, older, rough around the edges. They told me to let go, to move on. But how do you move on from nothing, from not knowing? Her hands twist in her lap, wedding band glinting. Newspaper headlines stack up, each one quieter than the last. Search for missing couple suspended. No trace found in Glacier Lake mystery. Families await closure and disappearance. Time marches, birthdays and anniversaries come and go, but the phone never rings. The cabin is rented to strangers. The porch swing creaks in the wind. The lake thaws and freezes and thaws again, unmoved by the empty spaces left behind. Ethan sits on the dock legs, dangling, staring at the water that refuses to give him back his brother. You start to think if you'd noticed something, if you'd said something, maybe it would have changed. I see their faces every night. I hear her laugh. It's the only thing I have that hasn't faded. The shot pulls back, leaving him small against the immensity of winter. The boat still drifting at the edge of the frame, a wound, not a relic. A narrator's voice cuts through, measured and low. Some stories freeze in time, waiting for the thaw. The people left behind keep listening for footsteps on the dock, a voice in the dark, a miracle that never comes. Sometimes all you get is silence. Sometimes silence is the first clue that the real story has yet to begin. The camera lingers on the empty boat. The wind rising, snow falling harder now, blanketing everything in white. It's as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for what comes next. The screen dims, and all that remains is the sense of something unfinished, restless beneath the surface, waiting for the light to come back. 22 years pass. Glacier Lake. Once the site of a tragedy, now wears a mask of indifference, a destination for tourists, weekenders, influencers, chasing wild beauty and the illusion of untouched wilderness. The land is the same, the shadows just a little deeper. The truth, like the lake's black water, lies still and undisturbed. But darkness, if you leave it long enough, begins to stir. It's late August 2023 when 5 young hikers, the sort who crave experience but not consequence, set out with rented gear and borrowed bravado. They're loud in the way only people untouched by real loss can be laughing. Taking selfies, their phones full of plans and promises. The sun is uncharacteristically bright as they follow an old path around the lake's rim, but soon the weather shifts, a gust of cold spilling down from the peaks. By late afternoon, they're searching for adventure or shelter, whichever comes first. The youngest, Maddie, spots a ribbon of mist where water vanishes behind a curtain of moss and rock. The group scrambles over slick stone hearts, pounding with a thrill of finding something secret. Behind the roar of the waterfall, they discover a narrow cleft in the stone, partly hidden by brambles, easy to miss for anyone who isn't looking. The air turns cool and damp, their breath fogging every footstep, magnified by the close walls. Brandon flicks on his headlamp, the light cutting a path into darkness. "Guys, look at this," he says, voice just a little too loud. It's not a cave exactly, but a tunnel, low and man-made, the walls reinforced by old timbers, slick with age. Mud sucks at their boots. Someone jokes about finding pirate treasure. They're too young to suspect they've tripped the wire on something haunted. The tunnel slopes down and curves, the roar of the falls replaced by the throb of their own hearts. Then the passage widens. The beam of Brandon's light lands on something jarring in this world of stone and water, a rusted steel door twisted off its hinges, half buried by silt. Behind it, the remains of a cramped chamber, the air heavy with mildew dust and a sourness that stings the nose. They stare in silence. The bravado ebbs. No one jokes. Maddie is the first to step inside, her hand pressed to her mouth. The others follow. There are things strewn across the floor, strange, anachronistic, out of place after so many years. A battered blue backpack lies collapsed in a corner. Nearby, a pile of tattered magazines. People, Time, National Geographic, dates ranging from the late 90s to early 2000s. Their covers spotted with mold but still visible. A plastic grocery bag logo, faded almost to white, contains bundles of receipts and a rolled-up map. In the center of the floor is a digital camera, dust-caked but whole, the screen cracked, the battery long since dead. One of the boys, Tyler, picks it up, turning it over in his hand. "Dude, this thing's ancient." There's more, a thermos, empty but clean. A notebook, its cover warped with water damage, a pair of gloves, size small, pink once, but now the color of ash. The walls themselves are etched with lines and notches, some carved deep, some just scratches. The air is colder here, the silence oppressive. Maddie's breath hitches. "We shouldn't be here," she whispers. No one disagrees. They back out, leaving everything as it was, but the memory follows them out into the open. Maddie can't stop thinking about the camera, the map, the childish handwriting in the battered notebook. Back at the lodge, she texts her uncle, a local firefighter, who calls the police the next morning. The case lands on the desk of Detective Lucy Grant. 34 compact and tired in a way that seeps from the inside out. She's been with the force for 10 years, long enough to learn that most cold cases stay cold, and that missing doesn't always mean gone. Lucy stands in the evidence room, listening to the details recited by a rookie who still stumbles over procedure. She rubs her temple, listening for what's missing, for what feels out of place. Lucy's eyes are sharp brown and always slightly wary, as if she's waiting for the world to pull another trick. The weight she carries isn't just from the badge or the hours, it's personal. Once long ago, she had a little sister, Sarah, whose favorite game was hide and seek. Sarah was good at hiding, so good that one day she was never found. Lucy remembers the posters, the interviews, her mother's silence at breakfast. She remembers the day the search was called off, how the world moved on, and she did not. Every case since then has been a kind of penance, a silent promise to keep looking, to never let the world forget. She drives out to Glacier Lake alone, the road curling through old pines, every curve haunted by the names she's learned and lost. The weather is changing, the wind tastes like rain, the sky sits heavy and metallic. When she arrives, the scene is cordoned off, yellow tape fluttering. The waterfall pounds the earth just out of sight. But it's the darkness beneath the earth that draws her. The tunnel is smaller than she expected. Lucy ducks under the beam, her boots squelching in mud, the light from her flashlight bouncing off the walls. The room is a pocket of the past, a time capsule left to rot. She kneels beside the camera, slipping it into an evidence bag. The notebooks, the magazines, the backpack, she handles each, as if it might shatter her gloved hands, precise and steady. She finds the map first. The ink faded but still legible, a route traced in green marker looping from the dock along the north shore, then off the main trail up into the hills. Along the way, names are scrawled. Olivia Mark, a few she doesn't recognize. There are question marks, stars, X's. Lucy's mind races. Who wrote this? Was it hope or desperation that drove them to chart every corner? She flips through the notebook, the first page is covered in scrawled grocery lists and the trivia of life. But deeper in, there are fragments, half-finished sentences, dreams, fears, a running tally of days. The last page is a plea. If you find this, please tell our families. We tried. The script is childish, desperate. Lucy feels the cold creep up her arms, settling into her bones. The magazines tell their own story. She pages through them, looking for the shape of a life, dog-eared corners. A crossword started, but never finished, an article on the 2001 solar eclipse, underlined twice in blue pen. There's a faded Polaroid tucked into one, Olivia and Mark. She recognizes them from the old news clippings, smiling, wind-blown cheeks, red from cold. They're alive in the image, impossibly alive. Lucy sits on the dirt floor, the evidence laid out around her, and feels the pressure of time collapse. 22 years gone, and yet the voices of the lost are whispering up from the ground. She can almost hear Olivia's laugh, see Mark's hand on her shoulder. These artifacts aren't just evidence. They're the residue of people who refuse to give up. She radios the station voice, calm, precise. We have significant evidence, artifacts, possible remains of a campsite. Requesting crime scene techs and forensic anthropologist on site. Potential tie-in with 2001 missing persons case, Olivia Carter and Mark Bishop. She closes her eyes just for a moment, feeling the ripple run through the case, through her own life. Another missing sister. Another promise to keep. The camera, when the techs finally pull the images, is a treasure trove. They recover the SD card carefully, drying it in the evidence lab. Lucy stands behind the technician, arms crossed, not daring to hope but unable to look away. The screen flickers, then brings up image after image. Olivia and Mark in the woods. Olivia crouched over a makeshift fire, Mark carving something into a tree. There are photos of the inside of the chamber, blurry but unmistakable. Then chillingly images of other people, faces, half-hidden figures caught at a distance watching from between the trees. One image is marked by a thumb smudge, a man with piercing eyes and a wild beard staring straight at the lens. Lucy copies the photos, spreading them out on her desk that night. She studies every detail, the patches on jackets, the brands of bottled water, the handwriting in the margins of maps, anything that might tell her more. She's looking not just for Olivia and Mark, but for herself, for the sister she could never find. She wants to believe that someone somewhere made it out. She wants to believe in miracles, or at least in closure. The next day, Lucy briefs her captain. "This wasn't an accident, sir. There's too much here. They tried to survive. They planned. They left a trail. The captain is cautious, already wary of wasting resources on what the department has long considered a dead end. But Lucy is relentless. She prints the photos, pins them to her board, draws lines between names and dates, her handwriting getting sharper with every new thread. Outside, Glacier Lake sits as it always has, still cold and passive. But inside Lucy Grant, something has awakened. She feels the pull of the story, the sense that unfinished business is scratching at the surface. The world may have forgotten Olivia Carter and Mark Bishop. Lucy has not. And now, with these artifacts in her hands, with the shadow of her sister still pressing at the back of her mind, she knows this case is hers. In the silent aftermath, as night folds itself around the lake, Lucy stands on the old dock, the wind tugging at her jacket. She looks out across the water, memory and present moment colliding. Somewhere beneath the moonlight, the past is still alive. Somewhere the truth is waiting to be unearthed. She vows to herself and the shadows that this time she will not let go. This time she will keep looking. This time she will bring someone home. The photographs lay scattered across Detective Lucy Grant's desk, their edges curling slightly, years of dirt and damp etched into every fiber. She turned each image over in gloved hands, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and stubborn hope that tasted like metal in her mouth. The screen of the evidence laptop glowed in the dimness of the precinct office, illuminating the faces frozen in time. Olivia, Mark, and crucially, people Lucy had never seen before. Strangers lurking at the edges of the frame, always half concealed by trees, bundled in layers that disguised their shapes, their eyes wary, some almost wild. Lucy didn't dare look away. She enlarged one photo, fingers trembling ever so slightly as she zoomed. Olivia crouched over a campfire, a battered enamel mug in her hands, eyes turned toward something just out of frame. Her cheeks were flushed, lips cracked, but she was alive. Not just surviving, a faint smile hovered unguarded, as if the camera belonged to someone she trusted. Mark appeared in another shot, holding a map, his face smudged with dirt and days of stubble. Behind him, a dark figure leaned against a tree, obscured by branches, but undeniably real. Lucy's mind raced. Were they friends or captors? Were Olivia and Mark hiding, or were they being hunted? Lucy called in her crime scene tech, Hannah, whose gift for detail bordered on obsession. Together they pored over each pixel, cataloging every clue. In one frame, Olivia's left hand gripped a pocket knife with a broken blade. Lucy recognized it from the inventory of evidence collected years ago, but the blade had never been found. Another image showed Mark's shoes, an unusual brand, impossible to buy locally at the time, suggesting a deliberate preparation for wilderness, not a hasty escape. But it was the third photo that made Lucy's breath catch. Olivia and Mark sat together, hunched on a mossy log, an arm slung protectively over Olivia's shoulders. A man, older, bearded, with eyes that seemed both exhausted and alert, knelt in front of them, offering a tin of food. Another person, little more than a silhouette, lingered just behind, half turned away from the lens. Lucy's skin prickled. This was not a couple lost and alone. This was a gathering. And the date stamped at the bottom, barely legible, February 2nd, 2002, was nearly 14 months after their official date of disappearance. A ripple of excitement, sharp and cold, ran through Lucy's chest. She double-checked the metadata with Hannah, then again, herself refusing to trust even the technology more than her own suspicion. The timeline lined up. These photos were real. Olivia and Mark had survived well beyond the storm that had swallowed them. And not just survived, they had company, a network, maybe even a chance. But what kind of chance? The faces in the background seemed wary, even haunted. Did they belong to rescuers or jailers? Lucy drafted her first report, every sentence precise, each word a careful argument against apathy. She included cropped images of Olivia and Mark alive, months after their supposed deaths, flagged the presence of unidentified individuals, and cited the coordinates she'd managed to extract from one image's GPS tag. The evidence was compelling, but as she submitted the file to her captain, she felt the weight of decades pressing down. She knew how this department worked. She'd seen what happened to detectives who dared disturb the waters of old closed cases. Sure enough, Captain Hawley summoned her before noon. His office was cramped, windows fogged by breath and rain, the smell of cheap coffee masking a lingering undertone of resignation. He didn't bother looking up from the case folder, his thumb tracing the faded text on the cover. "Lucy, I know you want to help these families. God knows you've worked every missing persons lead in this province. But you understand what you're asking, don't you? This case was closed. The resources it would take to open it again." He shook his head, brow furrowed. "And these photos, hell, they could be doctored. People play sick games." Lucy kept her hands flat on the desk, her voice even. "I'm not asking for a full task force. I want 3 more techs access to the cold case files and permission to bring in a profiler from Vancouver. Sir, there are faces in those photos we don't know. And Olivia and Mark, they didn't die. We can prove it. We owe it to their families." Hawley's silence was heavy. Finally, he slid the file across the desk. "You get a week. Make it count." Lucy's jaw tightened, but she nodded. That was all she needed, a crack in the wall. Outside the captain's office, the precinct hummed with cynicism. A pair of young officers exchanged glances as Lucy walked by. Back on the ghost story, one muttered not quite under his breath. She ignored them. She'd grown a thick skin for whispers and rumors ever since her sister Sarah vanished when Lucy was 16. She'd never found Sarah, but she'd spent every year since learning the shape of absence, the way people avoid your eyes, the way the world seems to shrink when hope flickers. Now with these photos, hope was a living thing, dangerous, contagious, hard to manage. The first calls went to the families. Lucy waited until dusk, then dialed Ruth Carter's number. The line rang so long she thought it would go to voicemail, but then a voice, brittle but alive, answered. "This is Ruth." "Mrs. Carter, this is Detective Lucy Grant. I'm with the British Columbia Provincial Police. I have some updates on your daughter's case." The silence stretched heavy with years of expectation and pain. "Please just tell me. I can't do this again if it's a false alarm." Lucy's voice was steady, soft. "We recovered a camera from a hidden site near Glacier Lake. There are recent images of Olivia. Well, not recent, but from after her disappearance. She's alive in them. And Mark, too. The photos are dated over a year after they vanished." A gasp, then a sob muffled and raw. Ruth's words tumbled out, desperate. "You're sure? Not just a look-alike, not another trick?" "They're clear, Mrs. Carter. I promise you they survived. And there are others. We're working to identify them now." The line went silent, just the sound of Ruth's breath, shaky and uneven. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you for not giving up." Lucy made the same call to Ethan Bishop, Mark's brother, who had long ago given up hope, but now sat stunned in his living room, clutching the phone with white-knuckled hands. "He made it," he whispered, as if the words themselves might vanish. "There's proof," Lucy said. "It's not the end of the story." News of the discovery spread in ripples. By morning, the families gathered at the precinct, disbelief and wonder etched into their faces. Lucy met them in the conference room, laying out the photographs one by one. She described the evidence, the metadata, the timeline, the faces of strangers, the objects that belonged only to Olivia and Mark. Ruth wept as she touched the image of her daughter. Ethan pressed his fist to his mouth, and even Mark's stoic father's eyes gleamed wet in the fluorescent light. "It means there's a chance," Ethan said, hope kindling in his voice for the first time in years. "It means we can find them." The press, hungry for sensation, but jaded by years of missing person stories that went nowhere, tried to sniff out the details. Lucy refused interviews. She wasn't about to let a feeding frenzy destroy the fragile rising hope in these rooms. Instead, she doubled down, bringing Hannah and 2 more techs into the investigation, opening the cold case vault, requesting forensic enhancement of the blurred figures in the photos. Late one night, Lucy sat alone at her desk, photos fanned out before her, red string connecting names and timelines on the whiteboard. She studied the strangers in the woods, their posture, the direction of their gaze, the clothes they wore. She imagined what Olivia must have felt days after the world had abandoned her for dead, clinging to Mark, surrounded by people she did not know if she could trust. Lucy knew that feeling, the world closing in, the desperate hope that someone somewhere was still searching. Her phone buzzed. A message from Hannah, breathless. "We've isolated the facial features on the man in the background. Not in any criminal database. But there's a scar above his right eyebrow, and his jacket has a patch one that was only issued to a logging crew out of Vancouver in the late 90s. I'm cross-referencing old employment records now." Lucy felt a surge of possibility. A network, perhaps people off the grid, survivors or conspirators. The photos weren't just a trail, they were a map. Each face, each object, each timestamp pointed somewhere to something. Outside, the city was dark and quiet. But inside the precinct, hope burned small, fierce, and insistent. For the first time in 22 years, the story wasn't about drowning or silence or forgetting. It was about survival, about stubborn love, about the refusal to let go. And Lucy, carrying the weight of her own lost sister, vowed that she would chase this thread to its very end, no matter where it led, no matter how deep the darkness. The families clung to hope, the city held its breath, and somewhere in the vast wild forests beyond Glacier Lake, the shadows began to stir. The past was not dead. It was waiting. And Lucy Grant would not stop until the truth saw daylight. The maps from the hidden cache lay unrolled across the precinct table. Their edges rough, their paths traced and retraced by hands desperate enough to risk everything for hope. They were nothing like the digital blueprints Lucy Grant was used to. These were drawn in pen and pencil. The green ink faded but not yet lost, marking trails along the north shore of Glacier Lake and beyond, threading into a wilderness that only the truly lost or the truly hunted would dare cross. Olivia and Mark had left their mark here, names and notations, scratched alongside cryptic symbols and hand-drawn stars. It was as if the maps themselves were alive, whispering for Lucy and her team to follow. Lucy stood at the edge of the table, her eyes flicking between the annotated routes and the cluster of photos arrayed beside them. She felt the weight of the past pressing in from every side, the pressure of the families waiting for news, the skepticism of her captain, the gnawing voice of her own guilt. But beneath it all was a stubborn thread of hope, a refusal to let another story end in silence. That refusal hummed in her blood as she slipped the maps into a waterproof pouch and headed out, her team in tow, toward the places the world had forgotten. Outside, the late September air was sharp and bracing, the light slanting gold across the face of the lake. Lucy drove north with Hannah and 2 junior officers, her hands steady on the wheel, every mile drawing them further from civilization and deeper into the unyielding forest. They parked where the old logging road vanished beneath undergrowth and moss, then set out on foot, boots crunching over fallen needles and old snow. The wilderness closed around them, the trees crowding close and the air carrying the tang of sap and the distant echo of water. Here the silence was absolute. As they walked, Lucy kept the map at her side, checking landmarks against memory and instinct. A fallen cedar here, a ridge sloping west. There a sequence of cues leading them steadily deeper. Each step away from the shore was a step closer to whatever Olivia and Mark had found or fled from more than 20 years ago. It wasn't long before the world around them began to change. The air grew colder, the ground wetter. Shadows thickened beneath the boughs, and even the birds grew quiet. Every so often the wind would carry a sound, a branch breaking a rustle in the brush that made Lucy's heart hitch. She kept her voice low, instructing her team to move in silence, to watch not just the path but the spaces between. The wilderness had its own laws, and Lucy had learned to respect them. After nearly 2 hours, they found the first sign, a scrap of fabric, blue and sun-faded, knotted around a branch 6 feet off the ground. Lucy stopped, reached up and untied it, turning it over in her hand. It was a piece of Olivia's scarf. She recognized the pattern from the photos. She pressed her lips together and tucked it into her pocket. The trail was growing warmer. The next marker came quickly. A stone cairn at the edge of a clearing, the rocks stacked deliberately, a strip of birch bark tucked beneath the topmost stone. Lucy knelt, fingers numb, and slid the bark free. On it, a message in hurried block letters, north by stream. Danger at night. The ink had run, but the warning was clear. Lucy's skin prickled. She scanned the forest, suddenly aware of how small they were, how exposed. As they moved on, the scenes began to shift between the present, where Lucy led her team through the forest, and the not-so-distant past. Every time she brushed a branch aside, the story slipped sideways, the forest dissolving into a memory. Olivia running through the trees, breath-ragged snow biting her cheeks. Mark, close behind the map, clutched in his hand, fear in his eyes. But determination etched into every movement. "Keep moving," he whispered. "Don't stop. They're close." The woods seemed to shift around them, every shadow a threat, every noise a warning. In the present, Lucy's team navigated a narrow ravine, the ground slick with wet leaves, the air sharp with cold. Hannah stumbled, catching herself against a root, her flashlight illuminating something at the base of a tree, a rusted canteen half buried in earth. Lucy picked it up, brushing away the dirt to reveal initials scratched into the metal MB. "Mark Bishop," she breathed. Her pulse quickened. They were here. Back in time, Olivia and Mark crouched behind a fallen log, listening as voices drifted through the trees. The voices were indistinct men arguing, searching. Olivia squeezed Mark's hand, silent tears freezing on her cheeks. "We can't go back," she whispered. "We have to hide until morning." The moonlight flickered through the branches, making monsters out of the trees. Mark nodded, pulling her close. In the darkness, their only comfort was each other. Lucy pressed forward, mind racing. If Olivia and Mark had been running, who had been chasing them? She glanced at the map, tracing the line north along the stream. The team followed, every sense on high alert. The forest grew denser, the light dimming as clouds gathered overhead. A drizzle began, cold and relentless. Lucy pulled her collar higher, squinting into the gloom. Then another sign, a series of carvings on a tree trunk high up where only a desperate hand would reach. A circle with an X through it, and below it, a set of notches, 12 in all. Hannah snapped photos, murmuring to herself. Coded message? Or just counting days? Lucy shook her head. Markings like these, they're meant to warn or guide. We need to pay attention. A sudden snap, a branch breaking in the distance. Everyone froze. The forest seemed to breathe, ancient and indifferent. Lucy signaled for silence, her hand tightening on her flashlight. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, just as suddenly, the sound vanished. She exhaled, the tension lacing her spine. In a flash, the story cut back to Olivia. She and Mark are stumbling through the undergrowth, their hands bloodied from thorns. Every step is agony, but stopping means death. Somewhere behind flashlights sweep the darkness, men calling to each other in rough, impatient voices. Olivia bites her lip until it bleeds. She won't cry out. Mark leads her, always shielding her with his body, always moving toward the water. Back in the present, Lucy's team crosses a stream, its banks slippery with mud. The map says to follow the stream north, and so they do. The sound of the water, a thin comfort against the anxiety gnawing at Lucy's insides. The sky darkens. The forest feels alive, watching. Every so often, someone glances over their shoulder, sure they'll see something or someone lurking behind a tree. Lucy pushes them on her own nerves, strung taut. They find more signs. A shoe print pressed into a patch of moss, barely visible, but unmistakable. A broken zipper from a backpack, a plastic whistle, green and cracked, lying half buried in the mud. Each item is bagged, logged, handled as if it might shatter. Each is a message from the past. Olivia and Mark saying, "We made it this far. Don't stop now." The woods close in the path, barely more than an animal track, the air charged with the sense that something is just out of sight. Lucy's breath frosts in the cold. She glances at Hannah, who nods, her eyes wide and scared. The officers behind them shift nervously, hands hovering near their belts. Then the present bleeds again into memory. Olivia and Mark stumble into a clearing, breathless. The moon is high cold and pitiless. In the center of the clearing stands an old hunting blind, half collapsed, but offering shelter. Mark pulls Olivia inside. "We'll rest here, just for an hour." She leans against him, exhausted, but the fear never leaves her eyes. Outside, something moves through the trees. A shape tall and silent passes through the moonlight, never pausing, never speaking. Olivia buries her face in Mark's jacket, praying for daylight. In the present, Lucy enters the same clearing. The hunting blind is there, barely more than a skeleton, the wood gone gray with age. She kneels inside, shining her light over the floor. Something glints, an earring blue stone, delicate. Lucy holds it up. "It's Olivia's," she whispers, voice thick with emotion. "We're close." Suddenly a shout from the trees. One of the officers has found something, shreds of fabric bright against the earth, and beneath them, a message scratched into stone. "Still running." Lucy's breath catches. She kneels, tracing the letters with her gloved hand. Olivia and Mark had passed through here. They'd left a message not just for their rescuers, but for each other, for anyone who might follow. The light is failing, the wind rising. Lucy calls a halt, her team gathering in the fading daylight. The forest seems to press closer, the air thick with the weight of everything left unsaid, everything still to be discovered. For a moment, Lucy feels the eyes of the past upon her, Olivia's, Mark's, maybe even her own sister's. She stands, brushing dirt from her knees, her resolve steel hard. "We're not done," she says, voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "We keep going." The team nods, silent but determined. Behind them, the woods seem to whisper shadows, shifting secrets, waiting. The trail is cold, the danger real, but hope, for the first time in decades, is burning in the dark. The evidence room at the precinct hums with low conversation and the sterile click of keyboards. The air is thick with anticipation. On the table under the harsh fluorescent light, Lucy Grant lines up the photos from the digital camera found in the secret chamber behind the waterfall. She narrows her gaze on the edges of each image, hunting for details that might have slipped past them before. This time, she's not searching for Olivia or Mark, not for what's familiar, but for the unknown. Hannah the tech stands beside her, eyes rimmed red from hours behind the monitor. "There's something here," she says, tapping the screen. Lucy leans in. It's one of the later photos, Olivia and Mark crouched around a meager fire, the blue night crowding in around them. At the periphery, blurred but unmistakable, a figure looms between two trees. Tall, heavy-shouldered, his head bent as if he's watching or waiting. Lucy's stomach twists. He doesn't look like the others. His jacket, oddly crisp for the wilderness, sports a patch, something gold too bright. Hannah enhances the shot, cycling through filters, sharpening and adjusting contrast. The details refuse to resolve fully, but a hint of a face emerges. Angular jaw, pale skin, and eyes that seem to stare right at the lens. A ghost among survivors. Lucy calls for more digging through the rest of the recovered images, not just from the camera, but from the Polaroids, the old phone data painstakingly retrieved from the battered flip phone found with the maps. A pattern starts to form in more than one shot. This same figure appears sometimes in the distance, sometimes just a shadow passing through the background, always watching. In one image, he's standing closer, hands folded behind his back, expression impossible to read. Next to him, partly obscured by darkness, is the faint gleam of a wristwatch, a flash of gold and black. Hannah cross-references the visual details with local missing persons, wilderness workers, even known criminals in the region. Nothing matches. "He doesn't belong here," Hannah mutters. Lucy's mind reels. A new suspect or a witness or something worse? It isn't until the following afternoon that the answer begins to take shape, not through the images themselves, but through the data trail they uncover in parallel. Lucy's financial crimes contact Tara calls in with an update. "You asked for records on anyone with significant cash flow tied to the area around Glacier Lake since 2000. Tara's voice is tight, almost eager. "We found something strange. Large transfers, 6 figures, sometimes more, funneled through shell companies, then landing with one Victor Lang." "Do you know the name?" Lucy feels the name like a shock down her spine. She's heard it before in rumors and late-night news pieces about the ultra-wealthy playing wilderness survivalist on private land. Victor Lang, she says the words tasting like poison. He runs those elite survival camps in British Columbia. The ones where you pay a fortune to test your limits in the wild. That's him, Tara confirms. He owns 3 properties in the region, 2 hunting lodges, one listed as a retreat, all within 50 miles of Glacier Lake. His financials are odd. No legitimate business income for years, but constant cash infusions from what looks like a network of trusts. I cross-checked with local hotel records. Lang booked entire floors at a lakeside resort 3 times in the last decade, always in winter, always under aliases. Lucy leans forward, tension building in her chest. Who was with him? Tara reads off a list of names, most just as mysterious foreign nationals, CEOs, the sort, who leave no trace except encrypted payments and vague records of chartered flights. The survival camps on paper are invitation only. But one detail stands out every year. In the dead of winter, Glacier Lake's population spikes for 72 hours, hotel bookings, satellite phone usage, helicopter rentals, all vanishing as quickly as they appear. Hannah searches for Lang's image online, scrolling through press clippings, event photos, real estate listings. When they finally find a publicity photo, Lang smiling for a magazine profile in 2018, silver hair slicked back, jaw set, dark eyes. Lucy's heart pounds. She overlays it with the enhanced photo from the woods. The chin, the shape of the face, even the set of the eyes, it's the same man. The same presence watching Olivia and Mark from the darkness all those years ago. Lucy's mind is racing now. She prints the images, pinning them to her board, alongside the maps, the notches carved into trees, the artifacts recovered from the wild. The pattern is clear. Lang isn't just a billionaire with a taste for wilderness. He's been here. He's connected to the disappearances. Maybe he's been hunting too. She's still assembling the timeline when the sense of unease begins to grow. It starts small, a car parked on her street at 3 in the morning, lights off, engine idling for just a little too long. A stranger at the cafe reading the newspaper, upside down, sunglasses indoors, despite the gray. Her mail starts coming late, some of it opened and taped shut. At first, Lucy dismisses it as nerves, the natural paranoia that comes from chasing ghosts and power. But the feeling grows. That night at her kitchen table, the fear crystallizes. Her phone vibrates. No caller ID. She answers. Silence at first, then a voice, smooth male, affected with the slightest hint of accent. Detective Grant, you're making waves. Not everyone likes the water stirred. Lucy's blood goes cold. She tries to trace the call. No luck. It's routed through a dozen numbers, lost before it ever arrives. The next day, an envelope appears on her windshield as she leaves the precinct. No address, just her name in neat black ink. Inside, a single photograph, grainy and black and white. It's the precinct taken from across the street, Lucy herself stepping out, her hand on her phone. On the back, a message scrawled in block letters, "Don't dig too deep." She shows it to her captain, who frowns and tells her to be careful. You're onto something real now, Lucy. They're watching, but Lucy's stubbornness flares. That just means I'm close, she says, jaw set. She throws herself deeper into the case. She digs into property records, uncovering evidence that Lang has leased land parcels near the lake to private conservation groups, none of which are listed as real businesses. She cross-references the names of Lang's associates with wilderness search and rescue logs, finding 2 that appear as volunteers the week after Olivia and Mark vanished. The same names turn up years later in connection to disappearances at other remote locations, from Alaska to Patagonia. Meanwhile, Hannah combs through old hotel guest logs. One entry from February 2002 stands out, a reservation for V. Lane room service charges for 5 people, a note from staff about late-night gatherings, do not disturb. Lucy requests security footage, but the hotel's records from that year are long erased, overwritten, or missing entirely. The team starts mapping incidents on a digital board. Unexplained deaths, hikers, missing, odd influxes of wealthy off-the-grid visitors. The same pattern repeats. Lang arrives often in the company of powerful men and women. And days later, the wilderness absorbs someone new. The police had always chalked it up to accidents, the cost of wild places. But Lucy knows better now. There's a predator behind these patterns. But as she closes in, the pressure mounts. Her phone is tapped. She knows it, feels it, but can't prove it. Her apartment is entered. She finds a window unlatched, drawers slightly out of place. A faint scent of cigar smoke that wasn't there before. Someone leaves a bottle of expensive whiskey at her door, the same brand Lang was pictured with in the magazine article. The message is clear: back off, or it'll be your turn to vanish. Lucy refuses to be intimidated. If anything, the danger sharpens her focus. She begins moving more carefully, checking her rearview mirror, switching up her routes home. She calls her mother, warns her not to answer unknown numbers. She sits with the fear and lets it become part of her resolve. She arranges a meeting with a hotel manager from one of Lang's favorite resorts. The woman is nervous, glancing over her shoulder, her voice low. Lang always paid in cash, she whispers. He brought his own staff. They never used the main entrance. Some nights I heard screaming, but when I checked, everything was quiet. They tipped well, too well. Her hands shake as she slides a ledger across the table. I kept copies. I never trusted him. The evidence grows, but so does the threat. One night, Lucy finds her car tires slashed a dead animal left on her porch. She calls it in, but the responding officers act as if she's paranoid, her reputation for chasing shadows coming back to haunt her. Still, Lucy pushes on. The next breakthrough comes from an unlikely source, a local guide retired, who remembers Victor Lang's parties. They came out here at night, he says, voice hoarse. Paid double not to ask questions, always brought more food than they needed. But they left with less than they brought. You understand, less. Sometimes I saw people, young ones, scared. Never locals. I learned to look the other way. Lucy listens, rage simmering beneath her skin. She thanks him, takes his statement, and files it away. She knows now what she's chasing and who's hunting her. The forest outside Glacier Lake grows darker with every secret uncovered. The photos on her board seem to move in the night, the shadows growing. Lang's eyes stare out at her from every angle, cold and knowing. Lucy doesn't flinch. She's already too deep. She tapes the threatening note to the center of her board, underlining it with red marker. Don't dig too deep. She smiles, fierce and wild. Let's see how deep this goes. The morning is bone cold and breathless, the kind of silence that suffocates more than it soothes. Lucy Grant stands at the edge of a ravine deep in the wild northern forest, frost feathering every branch and rock. The trees have thinned, giving way to a slope choked with rubble, an unnatural mound of stone and twisted timber, half swallowed by moss and the patient growth of years. This is where the map led her and her team to the scar, where the ground itself seems to mourn. They set to work, the team moving with a purposeful hush, their boots thudding softly over packed earth. A small drone whirs overhead, transmitting grainy images to Hannah's tablet. The collapsed entrance, the dark seam of an old vent, and almost invisible at first, a section of stone marked by a crude blackened sigil, a circle pierced by 3 parallel slashes. Lucy's skin crawls. She's seen that sign before, burnt into a tree in one of the old crime scene photos, a warning left by survivors or tormentors, she still can't say which. With hand tools, they begin to clear away the debris. The work is slow, careful, tense. Each stone and log lifted away feels like prying open a wound. After hours, they break through the air, inside cold and stale, laced with the bitter tang of mold and old fear. Lucy squeezes through the narrow opening, her flashlight bobbing in the dark, the beam swallowing up dust and silence. Inside, the world contracts. The ceiling is low, the walls rough and slick with condensation. The passage twists and forks, every turn ringed with shadows. There are marks, scratches gouged into the stone, tally marks, initials, desperate notes scrawled in charcoal or scratched with nails. Help. Alive 29. Don't forget me. Lucy's hand hovers over each as she passes, almost afraid to touch the last trace of the lost. Deeper, they find the remnants of an old door, splintered but still chained. The lock hangs open, the links pitted with rust. Beyond it, a row of cells no bigger than closets, framed in rotting timber and corrugated steel. Inside, scattered across the floor, are relics of the vanished. A shoe with the laces knotted tight, a bracelet of plastic beads spelling Olivia, a dented thermos with Mark's name etched on the side. There are blankets layered thick with dust chewed at the edges by mice or something worse, and broken pencils, the erasers long gone. Lucy moves from cell to cell, collecting and bagging each artifact, her gloves trembling. She tries to imagine the lives that filled these spaces, their days shrinking to fit the bounds of a stone box, their nights measured in hope and terror. She can almost hear their voices, the echo of prayers or pleas bouncing off the damp walls. Flash, the story snaps backward. Olivia shivering, huddled in the corner of a cell, arms wrapped around her knees. Mark is in the cell opposite, bruised, but awake, his voice low and urgent. Stay awake, Liv. Don't let them take you when you're dreaming. Above them, footsteps echo. The door opens. 2 men appear, faces masked, voices muffled. They shine a blinding light, bark orders, and drag Mark from his cell. Olivia's hands shake as she presses herself against the back wall. Her voice cracks in the dark. I'm here. I'm still here. Lucy, back in the present, finds herself drawn to the last cell in the row. It's different. The walls are covered in strange symbols, painted with something brown, and sticky messages or warnings Lucy can't tell. There are scraps of paper jammed into the cracks, some of them recent, the ink barely faded. Still alive, one reads. He comes at night. Not everyone is gone. Lucy's breath catches. The words are desperate but also defiant. Someone had hope even in the worst darkness. Hannah calls her over. In a corner near the back of the chamber, hidden beneath a pile of rubble, she's found something, a trap door. The wood splintered but still hinged. Together they wrench it open, coughing as a cloud of dust rises. A ladder leads down into blackness. Lucy hesitates, then climbs, the metal cold and slick beneath her hands. The air down here is older, the dark more complete. At the bottom, the tunnel widens into another chamber. The smell is stronger, the cold more invasive. Here the rooms are larger, less like cells, and more like cages with heavy iron bars set into the stone. Along one wall are racks of clothing, dirty and tattered men's and women's jackets, hiking boots, even children's sweaters, all abandoned in haste. There are names sewn into some others, tagged with numbers. Lucy's heart pounds. On a shelf are other items, a cracked phone, a gold watch engraved with initials, a disposable camera, empty of film, but with a smear of dried blood on the lens. The floor is scored with drag marks, as if something or someone was pulled out against their will. Flash, the past collides with the present. Olivia and Mark are yanked from their cells, stumbling through the tunnel, their wrists bound. They are forced into a central chamber where a crowd waits, men and women in expensive coats and rubber boots, their faces lit by the flicker of firelight. At the front stands a tall man, face half hidden by shadow, his voice cultured and calm, Victor Lang. He addresses the crowd, gesturing toward Olivia and Mark as if presenting livestock at auction. The rules are explained. Survival is earned, not given. Hunt them as you wish. Let the forest decide their fate. Some in the crowd cheer, others watch in cold silence. Olivia's gaze meets Mark's terror and resolve mixed in equal measure. The hunt begins. Back in the present, Lucy's team finds more evidence, a half-eaten can of beans, the lid peeled back with a knife still sticky. A pile of torn bedding in the corner, warm to the touch, as if someone had lain there recently. On the far wall, a calendar scratched into the stone days, counted and then abruptly stopped. A new set of tally marks starts again just below fresher cut with something sharp. Lucy runs her gloved finger across the grooves. These are recent. Someone has been here, maybe even now. They move deeper into the tunnel, flashlight sweeping. Hannah finds a secret alcove hidden behind a false wall. Inside are 3 bottles of water, 2 granola bars, and a tattered sleeping bag. There's a name written in markered Jessa. Lucy recognizes it from one of the missing persons files, a teenage girl gone missing from Alberta in 2018. The hope sharpens inside her, hot and urgent. Then a sound, soft, unmistakable. A whimper echoing faintly from the darkness ahead. Lucy signals her team, hearts hammering, weapons drawn. They move in slow and silent. At the end of the corridor, half hidden in shadow, is a makeshift barricade of crates and broken furniture. Behind it, cowering and blinking in the light, is a girl. Not more than 20. Her face is gaunt, her hair matted, but her eyes are clear. Lucy kneels, her voice gentle. "You're safe now. We're here." The girl clings to Lucy, sobbing, unable to speak. Hannah wraps her in a blanket. The team moves her out carefully, the light of hope flickering in the darkness. Flash of memory. Olivia, trapped but unbroken, presses her palm against the glass of her cell. Mark, somewhere in the darkness, shouts her name. She answers, "I'm alive." And in that moment, even surrounded by monsters, hope flares a signal that will travel forward through every year, every rescue, every person who refuses to disappear. Back in the tunnel, Lucy stands amid the wreckage of horror and endurance. She closes her eyes, feeling the story pulse beneath her feet. There are still people here, survivors, maybe even Olivia herself. The evidence is clear. The hunt is not over. But neither is the fight. Lucy radios for backup, voice trembling with relief and fury. "We found survivors. We need medical now. And more search teams, dogs, every resource. We're not leaving anyone behind." The dark hums with ghosts and memory. But for the first time, light is breaking through. And Lucy Grant knows with every fiber of her battered hope that the end of the tunnel is finally in sight. The evidence is no longer deniable. It hums with a dark logic all its own. A network mapped in cash transfers property deeds, hidden names and silent disappearances. Lucy Grant stands in the center of the incident room, the walls around her papered over with photographs, flight manifests, wire transfers, encrypted emails, and grainy images from the wild. The scope of what she's uncovered threatens to swallow her. Every thread she pulls leads not to one predator, but to a global web, a game run from the shadows by those too rich and powerful to fear the law. It begins with a spreadsheet sent over by Tara in financial crimes. But it grows into something monstrous. Names of billionaires and oligarchs from Toronto, New York, Zurich, Dubai. Shell companies link their fortunes to wilderness retreats, all in remote corners of the world. The British Columbia woods, it turns out, are just one hunting ground among many Alaska, Scandinavia, the jungles of Colombia. Each place is a cold spot on the world's map where justice thins and cruelty flourishes. Lucy's hands shake as she traces the routes. Victor Lang is not the only orchestrator, he is just a face of front. The real architects hide behind boards of directors, offshore accounts, private jets, and untouchable legal teams. The club they have built is not just for the thrill of the hunt, but for the pleasure of dominance, for the silence that follows, when the world refuses to believe such evil is possible. As she connects the dots, the room feels smaller, the air tighter. The press is circling outside, their hunger for scandal insatiable. Her superiors have grown cautious, no more encouragement, just warnings and paperwork. Lucy's phone rings at odd hours, voices at the other end, disguised or silent. Her emails are hacked, her social media flooded with messages. Turn back. Watch your child. Accidents happen in the wild, but she cannot turn back. She can feel the lives at stake vibrating through every new piece of evidence. With each revelation, her own world grows more fragile. The sense of being watched is no longer paranoia. It is fact. One night, driving home along the winding road by the lake, she notices a pair of headlights following too close. She changes lanes, speeds up, slows down. The car mimics her every move. Only when she makes a sudden turn into a police station parking lot does it peel away. At home, her mother calls a man, came to the door asking if Lucy was still working those missing persons cases. Her daughter's school reports a stranger loitering at the fence, a camera hanging from his neck. Lucy tries to keep her terror in check, but the walls feel thinner every night. She stashes a weapon beneath her pillow, triple checks the locks, changes her routes. She tells her daughter bedtime stories about wolves and brave girls, her own voice shaking, determined not to show fear. But the fear is real. It grows as the darkness presses in. She turns to her allies. Tara in financial crimes, Hannah in digital forensics, a handful of trusted detectives who still believe the law is more than a game for the powerful. They build their own bunker, an encrypted network of files and evidence backups, scattered in safe deposit boxes and cloud storage. Every step is a gamble. Every breakthrough brings new threats. The feeling is like standing at the edge of an abyss, the wind always rising, something monstrous lurking just below the surface. Then, the evidence grows even more disturbing. Hannah traces encrypted messages routed through the dark web, contracts for weekend excursions where prey will be released into the wild. Some contain lists, names, ages, brief physical descriptions, photographs snapped at airports, train stations, even bus stops. Lucy's stomach turns when she recognizes a few people on missing persons lists across Canada and the US. The victims aren't just lost, they've been cataloged, chosen, and sold. A leak from inside the organization, an anonymous email subject line. "You're getting close" arrives at 3 in the morning. The sender provides a password and a link to a hidden folder. Inside are videos, grainy night vision men and women running through the dark panting with terror. Others with rifles, night goggles, tracking dogs. The commentary is clinical cold like a nature documentary, except the prey is human. Lucy cannot watch it all. She wants to throw up. But she knows she has to look, has to see the faces, memorize the details. She prints stills, blurs the most brutal images, posts the evidence for her team to see. This is what they are fighting. But the world outside isn't ready for the truth. The Attorney General's office demands she turn over all findings and cease her independent investigation. This is a federal matter now, they say. Your safety is at risk. Lucy refuses, knowing the moment she lets go, the trail will vanish into the bureaucratic fog. She leaks just enough to the press to keep the story alive. The existence of a hunting society, the missing the hint of elite involvement. The backlash is immediate. Trolls swarm her online, painting her as hysterical, a conspiracy theorist. She's accused of fabricating evidence, of destroying her own career out of grief for her sister. A local news van parks outside her house. Her ex-husband calls in a panic, threatening to sue for custody if she keeps putting our daughter in harm's way. The department launches an internal review. Lucy spirals. She works on autopilot, numb and sleepless fear driving her every move. At night, she dreams of the tunnels of the hunt of Olivia and Mark, running through endless forest, while rich men laugh and place bets. She wakes in the dark, reaching for her daughter, for proof that some part of her world is still safe. The climax hits in the early hours one cold morning. The team's secure server is breached. Files disappear, evidence wiped, digital forensics burned. Only the hard copies stashed in 4 secret locations remain. Lucy's home is broken into. Her research scattered, her walls vandalized with a single phrase, "Run while you can." Her daughter's favorite toy is found in the driveway, shattered. The message is clear, and yet Lucy refuses to back down. She calls an emergency meeting with her team. This is how they win, she tells them. With fear, with silence. If we give in, they'll keep hunting forever. But if we push, if we make this too loud, too public, too big to erase, they'll have nowhere to hide. Her voice shakes, but her eyes do not. The team nods. Even in fear, there is something indestructible burning in the room. In her lowest moment, Lucy sits alone in the incident room, the night pressing in at the windows, sirens howling far away. Her hands shake with exhaustion. She thinks of Olivia and Mark, of Jessa and the others, of all the names on her wall. She thinks of her sister. She thinks of her daughter sleeping in the next room. She thinks of the darkness that has wrapped itself around so many lives, and of the light that somehow refuses to go out. And in that darkness, Lucy Grant makes a choice. She will not stop. No matter what they threaten, no matter how alone she feels, she will keep fighting. Because for every monster hiding behind money and shadow, there are voices calling out, still alive, still waiting to be found. The fear does not leave her, but hope, the kind born of fury and love and refusal, burns brighter. And she clings to that as she steps out into the night, knowing that the real hunt is just beginning. Lucy Grant's hands are raw from worry and winter wind, but adrenaline is a sharper drug. It's late, closer to dawn than midnight, and the city is gripped in that uneasy cold hush that only comes when something monumental is about to break. She sits hunched over her kitchen table, eyes burning from blue light, scrolling through a torrent of encrypted messages, calls, and evidence files, every clue, every whisper, every new piece of the rotten puzzle laid bare. The silence in her apartment is broken only by the hiss of the coffee maker and the distant hum of sirens. She doesn't flinch. Not anymore. The phone buzzes. It's Ben Rowley, the only investigative reporter she's learned to trust, sharp, irreverent, reckless, in the way only those who've already lost can afford to be. He's found something new. They're talking, he says, voice tight and urgent. Your press leaks are working. The internet's chewing on the story like a bone, and the forum rats are running scared. You're flushing them out, Lucy, even the rich ones. She glances at her notes. The Reddit thread she seeded last night, disguised as an urban legend, but rich in real deadly details, has gone viral. Someone posted an encrypted link, a cache of victim photos, time-stamped GPS logs from Lang's helicopter flights, and even snippets of encrypted emails between shell companies. The internet is ablaze. International news outlets are circling, and social media hashtags have lit up with theories and outrage. Lucy smiles grimly. This is the oxygen that will keep her fire burning. But with every headline, every share, the stakes climb. The warnings escalate. Threats arrive by text, then by burner phone, then most chillingly by handwritten notes slipped beneath her windshield wiper. Back off, or your daughter is next. The words are blocky, pressed hard enough to tear the paper. Lucy's jaw sets. She snaps a photo, slips the note into an evidence bag, and locks it in her safe. At the precinct, she and Ben sit side by side in the dim interrogation room. Laptops open their breaths, fogging in the cold air. They're not alone. The cybercrimes team is monitoring everything, but Lucy trusts no one completely. She shares the newest evidence with Ben, recordings of distorted voices, veiled threats, the sound of static and fear. Together they dissect each audio file, parsing out dialects, background noise, ambient clues, a train horn, the hum of an industrial refrigerator, a dog barking in the distance. Every detail is mapped and archived. Ben is relentless. He calls contacts in 3 countries, trading favors and risking legal lines to pull up records, flight manifests, passport stamps, and shell company registration docs that tie the network of hunters together. With Lucy's blessing, he dumps sanitized versions online enough to prove the scale, the money, the blood on the hands of powerful men. The effect is immediate. Financial news tickers flash with reports of sudden market drops. A billionaire's yacht seized in Spain, an anonymous whistleblower handing over a hard drive in Zurich. Lucy knows they're being watched. It's part of the plan. She walks the city in the evening, wearing a hat pulled low, a scarf masking half her face. She stops at coffee shops, hotel lobbies, anywhere she might overhear a careless word. She collects DNA samples from cups, napkins, cigarette butts, all left behind by associates of Lang she has tracked through shadowy bar rooms and quiet parks. She uses the latest rapid DNA kits, uploads the results to the secure cloud, cross-checks every sample against Interpol and the RCMP's database. No one is invisible anymore, but the night is always waiting. Somewhere in a glass-walled office high above the city, Victor Lang is not sleeping. He's shouting into his phone, rage, barely contained, accusing his lieutenants of betrayal. You were supposed to keep it clean, he hisses. We had protection. How did this get out? His confidants shift and sweat. Some blame Lucy, others blame each other. A web that once felt unbreakable is unraveling at the edges. The promise of immunity, of silence, of old money covering all sins. Suddenly, these assurances seem brittle and foolish. Lang pours himself a drink with a shaking hand, watches the city lights flicker. Someone in his organization has been feeding information to Lucy or the press, and now he trusts no one. He orders digital trails, scrubbed passports, burned offshore accounts, moved again and again. But the network is a living thing. Too many hands, too many eyes. Every order he gives, every demand only breeds more panic. Flash in a dim-lit back room, 3 men argue in clipped French and German, debating whether to cut Lang loose or turn him over to authorities. A video call blips to life, a masked face, voice disguised. The Canadian has to disappear. Now. No more mistakes. The language of monsters is always clinical, always calm. Back on the ground, Lucy is moving with the methodical terror of someone who knows there's no safety in caution. She sets up her own digital honey trap, a fake victim, a survivor with evidence, a chance for the predators to clean up. She monitors the dark web chat rooms, tracks the IPs as they shift from Paris to Miami to Vancouver. The ones who bite are reckless or desperate, and each one that surfaces brings new evidence. Cryptocurrency wallets, anonymous phone numbers, boarding passes for chartered flights, fragments of video. Ben's latest scoop drops just after midnight. A data dump implicating several European and American executives, a tech mogul from California, a sports tycoon from Berlin. The story is picked up by the Guardian, Der Spiegel, Le Monde. Lucy reads the headlines on her phone, fingers, trembling eyes dry. Every word she sees is a lifeline to the survivors and a noose to the guilty. The retaliation comes fast. Ben is followed, leaving the newsroom. Lucy finds her car keyed, a bullet casing placed on her windshield. Her daughter's school goes on lockdown after an anonymous call. Lucy barely sleeps. She has nightmares of Olivia and Mark running through black woods, of her own child caught in the crosshairs of a faceless hunter. Yet she pushes forward, driven not by hope alone, but by the cold, urgent need for justice. In her private notes, she scribbles lists of DNA profiles, license plates, hotel room numbers. She records every threatening call, every scrape of breath at the end of the line. She keeps her recorder on her phone camera always rolling. If she vanishes, the evidence will not. Her story is already scattered, uploaded, waiting for others to finish if she cannot. The night before her planned confrontation with Lang, Lucy parks 2 blocks from his penthouse, sitting in darkness, watching the flicker of movement behind the glass. She listens to a new recording, a voice she recognizes at last. It's not Lang. It's someone higher up, a name she'd only whispered in suspicion. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Detective," the voice warns, "but you're about to find out. You don't get to change the world." She grips the steering wheel, breathes deep, and sends the audio file to Ben, to 3 trusted allies, to the cloud. She checks her DNA kits, her backup phone, the pistol under her seat. This is what it is to fight monsters, to gather their blood, their voices, their digital ghosts, and drag them into the light. She steps out into the cold, the city humming around her, and walks into the night, knowing that every step closer to the truth brings both salvation and peril. But she does not turn away. The truth is not a weapon you draw and sheath at will. It is a fire you tend, even if it burns you alive. The blizzard is coming down in ragged sheets, turning the forest into a shifting labyrinth of white and shadow. Lucy Grant crouches at the edge of the tree line, her heart pounding so hard she can feel it in her fingertips. All around her, the tactical team, 12 men and women in black rifles, slung eyes burning behind their visors, waits for her signal. Every breath is a plume in the frozen air. She whispers one last time into her radio, and the voice that crackles back is raw, terrified, and fiercely alive. "This is Jessa. I'm with her. Olivia's here. Please don't wait any longer." Lucy closes her eyes. The coordinates are precise. The signal's source moving urgent, a cluster of old logging cabins on the far side of the frozen creek, camouflaged beneath snow-laden firs. The informant, a survivor half starved and half wild, but unbroken, had crawled through a drain, found a smuggled phone, and sent out the SOS just hours earlier. There's no more time. The longer they wait, the more likely Lang's people will wipe away every last trace of the victims. Lucy signals go. The team moves in a silent wedge boots, crunching in hard-packed snow breath, tight with anticipation and dread. Floodlights flicker to life as they close in. An alarm screams, an inhuman metallic wail that cuts the night open. The enemy responds at once. Shadows lunge from behind logs. Muzzle flashes rip through the blizzard, bullets chewing bark and powder into the air. Lucy and her team press forward, firing in short, disciplined bursts, every movement drilled and deliberate. One of Lang's sentries, a big man in a white parka, a wolf's head stitched on his sleeve, lurches from cover, spraying rounds wildly. Lucy ducks behind a fallen trunk, yells orders into her mic. 2 of her people sweep left, flanking. The sentry goes down hard. Return fire cracks from a window in the largest cabin. The tactical team lays suppressing fire as Lucy sprints through knee-deep drifts, breath freezing on her lips. The snow has turned crimson where it touches the fallen. She shoves open the cabin door, gun raised. Inside is chaos, the air thick with gun smoke shrieks and the pleading voices of prisoners. 3 women are huddled against the back wall, shackled together, faces ghostly and streaked with tears. A 4th lies on the floor, blood pooling from a wound in her leg. Lucy covers the room as her team sweeps through shouts for the medic. Clear, someone yells, but it's never clear for long. Down the corridor, doors slam and feet thunder. Lang's lieutenants are scrambling, some grabbing laptops, others burning papers, trying to erase everything. A second gunfight explodes near the back, echoing through the rafters. One of Lucy's team takes a hit, goes down hard. The others drag him out, blood spattering across the ice-slicked floor. Lucy barely registers it. Her focus is narrow, needle-sharp, locked on the next door, the next room, the next chance. And then she sees her. Olivia Carter, older, but unmistakable. Her hair hacked, short eyes alive with fury. She's helping another woman. Jessa prop up an injured man, likely another captive. Lucy almost collapses with relief. "Olivia," she shouts, and the name seems to shock the whole room into a stunned, aching silence. Olivia's head jerks up, hope and terror mingling in her gaze. "You came," she whispers. Lucy rushes forward, gun still raised, hands shaking. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." A thunder of boots from the main hall. A new squad of armed men pour in, guns blazing, forcing Lucy and Olivia to dive for cover. The firefight is a frenzy of muzzle flashes and ricochets, bullets carving splinters from the doorframe. Someone tosses a flashbang. The world explodes into white noise and pain. Lucy rolls, vision swimming, teeth gritted, and empties her magazine into the shape looming over Olivia. In the confusion, Victor Lang himself appears, impeccably dressed, even here face set in a mask of cold certainty. He's armed, moving with the precision of a man who's orchestrated this violence 1,000 times before. He fires at Lucy, missing by inches. She fires back, driving him behind a desk. He snarls, voice rich with contempt. "You don't understand what you're interrupting, detective. These people are nothing. This is bigger than you, bigger than any law." Lucy slides behind a heavy steel locker, reloading. Her blood is humming, brain sharp with rage. "They're not nothing. Not to me. Not anymore." Lang lunges, firing, but Lucy is faster. She bursts from cover, tackling him to the ground. The gun skitters away. They grapple. Lang is stronger, but Lucy's desperate. He gets a hand on her throat, squeezing the world, narrowing to a tunnel of blue and white. She jams her knee into his ribs, forcing him off. They roll in the snow, the cold biting at exposed skin, every breath agony. The firefight rages outside her team, rounding up the last of Lang's henchmen, gunfire thinning as more of the network flees into the forest. Helicopters thunder overhead. Sirens rise on the road below. Lucy shoves Lang's head into the ice cuffs, snapping around his wrists. "You're done," she spits. "This ends now." Lang coughs, blood in his teeth, a sick, almost admiring grin twisting his face. "You think this is the end?" "There are others. There will always be others." Lucy hauls him to his feet, furious and shaking. "Not if we drag every last one of you into the light." She pulls him through the carnage, past weeping survivors, past her own team, as they triage the wounded, clear the rooms, and radio for more ambulances. She feels like she's moving underwater, the roar of blood in her ears, the world flickering with pain, adrenaline, and grim relief. Outside, in the cold pre-dawn, she collapses to her knees beside Olivia, wrapping her in a rough embrace. Olivia shakes, sobbing but alive. Jessa kneels beside them, clutching Lucy's hand, eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. The snow around them is littered with the detritus of 100 secrets, burned files, shattered phones, blood and hope. The forest is quiet, the sky just starting to pinken in the east. Victor Lang is marched away in cuffs, his face pale, defiant, broken. Lucy's breath shudders in her chest, but she forces herself up back into the light. For a moment, nothing moves except the steam rising from the wounds of the forest and the trembling shoulders of the freed. The line between life and death is thin as breath, and everyone left alive feels it. Lucy looks at Olivia, at the others, at the broken, rescued, and unbowed. and feels hope rise in her for the first time in years. This is what survival looks like, messy, bloody, exhausted, and shining in the first light of day. She takes Olivia's hand, and together they walk out of the woods. Dawn claws its way over the horizon, pale and uncertain, chasing away the last shreds of blizzard and gun smoke that still hang over the battered outpost. For a moment, the world feels empty, just broken snow, the churring of police radios, and the rising, aching groans of the living. And then, like some hidden spring bursting loose, the tears begin. Olivia Carter emerges first, shoulders squared and head high despite the grime and bruises. Her hair, hacked short in desperation, is stiff with old blood and new sweat. Her face is raw and hollow-eyed, but her steps are steady. Behind her come others, Jessa barefoot and trembling, but smiling through cracked lips. A wiry man with a week's-old beard and a hospital tag still clinging to his wrist. Two sisters clutching each other as if the world could fall apart if they let go. The survivors file out one by one, blinking into the hard daylight. Each carries their own story of horror, of hiding, of the 1,000 tiny rebellions that kept them alive, carving notches into the wall, memorizing guard patterns, whispering names to each other so they wouldn't vanish completely. And at the head of this slow parade is Olivia, her hand raised, calling softly to the huddled cluster of officers and medics. "There are more in the basement. Help them, please. Hurry." Lucy Grant stands back, arms outstretched, face streaked with sweat and tears. She moves from person to person, pressing water bottles into shaking hands, murmuring, "You're safe. You're here. It's over." She watches as each survivor is swept up by paramedics, draped in blankets, gently checked for wounds, and frostbite ushered with awe and urgency toward waiting ambulances. But the greatest rescue is not just from the ground. As Lucy scans the faces, she spots a familiar silhouette at the edge of the crowd, a middle-aged woman clutching a photo to her chest, unable to move, afraid to hope. It's Olivia's mother, her hair gone white since the last time she saw her daughter alive. When Olivia sees her, she freezes. For a heartbeat, the world stands still. Then Olivia's face crumples, a tidal wave of grief and hope and disbelief. She staggers forward, arms open, the photo falling forgotten into the snow. They meet halfway, the reunion a messy tangle of limbs and sobs. "Mom," Olivia chokes, and her mother collapses into her, holding her so tightly it seems as if she might never let go. "I knew it. I always knew you'd come back." Her mother weeps. "I never stopped believing." Jessa is next, swept up in the arms of an aunt who flew across the country as soon as the news broke, both sobbing so hard their knees buckle and they sink together into the slush. Behind them, the wiry man drops to his knees as a young boy runs toward him, flinging his arms around his father's neck, babbling, "Daddy, Daddy," between sobs. The sisters spot their older brother, who thought he'd lost them both to the woods, and the three collapse into a heap of laughter and tears and whispered apologies. Lucy, exhausted, kneels at Olivia's side, a quiet anchor in the chaos. Olivia clings to her, the sobs shaking both their bodies. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice so thin and brittle Lucy fears it might break. "I thought I'd never see the sky again." And all around them, the healing begins. Medics set broken limbs, press warm hands to cold skin. Officers ferry rescued children to warmth, tears running down their faces. News crews arrive cautious at first, then overcome, as the full scale of survival and reunion becomes clear. Cameras catch the trembling hands, the racking sobs, the dazed, battered hope in every survivor's eyes. The world watching holds its breath. Yet beneath every embrace, there is an undercurrent of loss, a silent roll call for those who didn't make it out. Mark Bishop's name is the first to fall from Olivia's lips, ragged and reverent. Lucy sits beside her on the curb, her own eyes wet as Olivia recounts Mark's final moments. A flashback etched in pain and love. It was Mark who'd found the key to the outer door, Mark who'd distracted the guard while Olivia and the others scrambled for the tunnel. Mark who'd taken the blow meant for her, his body shielding hers from the butt of a rifle. "He told me to run," Olivia whispers, voice ragged. "He told me to keep going, to tell the world what happened. He said he'd see me home." Lucy wraps her arms around her, holding her tight, letting her grieve in great, keening sobs. "He saved us all." Olivia gasps. He never stopped fighting even when he knew she can't finish. But Lucy knows. Everyone does. The police form a silent honor guard as Mark's body is carried out wrapped, not in a shroud, but in the jacket Olivia left behind, his hand still clutching the photo of the two of them taken before the world broke. The courage of the survivors becomes legend in the hours that follow. Reporters catch Olivia as she leaves the field hospital, her voice hoarse but resolute. "We survived because we had each other, because we refused to let them erase us." Her words ripple out, igniting something fierce and luminous in viewers everywhere. Lucy, when asked what kept her going, simply nods toward Olivia and the others. "Hope," she says, "and the knowledge that monsters only win if we let them hide in the dark." In the makeshift recovery tent, survivors share food, laughter, and gentle jokes. They take turns on a satellite phone calling families, the air ringing with disbelief and joy. There is time, too, for silence, for the slow stitching of wounds, for the remembering of the lost, for the private grief that will never fully heal. But hope is louder now. In every embrace, every shuddering breath, every child wrapped in their parents' arms, survival rings out as a kind of victory song. At sunset, the sky glows gold on the snow-dusted field. Olivia stands at the edge, watching as Mark's body is taken away, tears tracking clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks. She presses her hand to her chest, whispering a promise. "I'll live for both of us. I'll tell our story. I'll make sure no one ever forgets." Lucy stands beside her, silent in solidarity, eyes fixed on the horizon. For the first time in years, she feels something like peace stirring inside her, mingled with the ache of loss and the thrill of survival. Around them, families are reknit, futures rewritten, and a new chapter begins, not just of endurance, but of healing. And as the last light fades from the sky, Olivia turns and steps into the warmth of the waiting world, forever marked, forever brave, never alone again. They take Victor Lang away in cuffs before the frost has melted from the ground, a scrum of flashing cameras and shouting reporters chasing every step. His face so cold and composed through the violence of the night before is mask-like now. No triumph, no bravado, just the quiet terror of a man who can no longer buy silence. The tactical lights reflect off his hair. The scar on his jaw, legacy of a long-ago hunt, is exposed for the world to see. The cuffs gleam in the morning sun, and for a moment, every camera on Earth is fixed on him. It takes only hours for the first images to sweep across the news cycle. Lang head bowed, being loaded into a cruiser. The battered survivors wrapped in blankets. Lucy Grant standing sentinel amid a scatter of evidence bags and searchlights, her face tired but unyielding. The headlines multiply by the hour. Human hunting ring busted in Canada. Missing found alive. The nightmare at Glacier Lake. There is shock, outrage, disbelief, a collective gasp that this kind of evil was possible not in the dark ages, but in the bright, networked world of now. The international press descends on British Columbia satellite trucks, jam the road, into the forest drones, buzz above the battered cabins, and every survivor's story is suddenly impossibly news. Families gather outside the hospital, swarmed by microphones. The police station's lobby becomes a hive of voices and lights, each news anchor hunched over their notes, ready to deliver the latest update to a breathless world. But it is Olivia Carter who commands the most attention. Pale, exhausted, still stitched and bandaged from her ordeal, she stands before a wall of microphones at a hastily assembled press conference. At her side is Lucy in uniform, jaw-tight hands folded over a yellow legal pad. Olivia's voice is soft, hesitant at first, as she recalls the 22 years lost, the moments of terror, the acts of courage, the sacrifice that let her survive. The world is silent for her. Every word she speaks sends ripples across continents. She tells the story as it happened, how she and Mark were hunted, how they were held underground, how the sound of running water became the rhythm of their prison. She speaks of Mark, his heroism, his laughter, his last whispered words. She names the other survivors, refusing to let them be reduced to victims. She thanks Lucy, her team, the paramedics and doctors, and the nameless good people who never stopped searching. "We are here," she says, "because hope is stubborn, because monsters can be found and beaten even when they hide in plain sight." International networks replay her statement in full. Social media explodes with messages of support, with hashtag Hope for the Lost trending in 30 countries. People light candles in public parks, hold vigils for the missing, and send thousands of letters and paintings and poems. Olivia, once invisible, is now the face of resilience, a survivor transformed into a symbol. But for Lucy Grant, the celebration is jagged. In the same breath that brings her praise medals and headlines, Hero Cop ends Glacier nightmare. There is the sting of unfinished work. She stands in the glare of television lights, accepts the handshake of the premier, the embrace of her captain, the nod of approval from families and strangers alike. Yet her eyes never rest. They are always searching, counting, remembering the names on her wall that were never called home. The legal reckoning is swift. Victor Lang, along with a dozen other conspirators, is paraded through arraignments. Their lawyers posture and bluff. But the evidence, DNA, video, survivor testimony, Lang's own words on tape, is overwhelming. Still, Lucy knows the truth. For every Lang in a cell, there are others who have vanished into the shadows. The club was too big, too rich, too global to be crushed in a single night. One ring exposed. Many more may be still hunting somewhere out there. Late one night, Lucy sits alone in the precinct, the party long over. The case board is half cleared, half rebuilt, some faces smiling in the found column, some still staring out in black and white from the missing. She listens to Olivia's televised interview again, the part where she says, "Even in the dark, I never forgot who I was. I never forgot there was light." The words echo in Lucy's mind, colliding with her own memories of chasing ghosts through forests and files. A producer from CNN calls, offering her a book deal, a documentary, a chance to tell her story. Lucy thanks her politely and hangs up. She doesn't want fame. She wants answers. She wants the nightmares to end for good. Still, there is solace. She watches Olivia lead a group of survivors into a classroom for the first time, speaking quietly to a room of missing children's families, answering questions, giving comfort, turning agony into hope. Lucy attends the session, stands in the back, and listens. The survivors are building a foundation, lobbying for better laws, more search resources, a database for the vanished. Already missing persons cold cases in 3 countries are being reopened. Names are called, leads found. Light shines through old darkness. But even as the world celebrates, Lucy can't let go of the feeling that somewhere in some rich wood or snowy field, another game may have already begun. She keeps her files open. She calls survivors on quiet nights, checking in, making sure the monsters haven't found their way back. The world calls her a hero. Her family celebrates. But Lucy Grant knows the fight for justice never ends at the courthouse steps. It lives on in every survivor who dares to speak, every victim's name still unanswered, every echo in the woods. As the snow melts from the ruins at Glacier Lake, Lucy walks the silent shoreline alone. She breathes in the clean, cold air, listening to the hush that follows a storm. She feels the hope, yes, but also the burden, the stubborn, burning need to keep going, to keep searching, to never let evil believe it can hide forever. And as she watches Olivia speak for the world, Lucy promises herself, no matter how many monsters vanish, no matter how long the dark, she will always return to the hunt. For justice, for hope, for all the ones still waiting. Night comes earlier now, or maybe it just feels that way. Olivia Carter notices it in the hush of her mother's living room. The way the shadows lean longer. The way even a cup of tea can feel too heavy in her hands. The world has moved on in a blur of headlines and celebration. But for Olivia, the rescue was not the end. It was only the first moment in a longer, slower kind of battle. A war she will fight in her bones, her sleep, and in the spaces between every heartbeat. The first signs come quietly. She wakes gasping for air, tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, the echo of bootsteps and gunfire chasing her from sleep. At the grocery store, the metallic clang of a shopping cart against a freezer door sends her spiraling heart slamming, every nerve screaming to run. Even sunlight through the window can seem too bright, the sound of water too much like the echo of captivity. She forgets things, loses words, catches herself staring at the horizon for hours, not remembering how she got there. She apologizes to her mother for her silences, her flinches the way she sometimes sits for hours and cannot move. Lucy Grant is never far. She comes by quietly at first, dropping off food, checking the locks, sitting at Olivia's kitchen table long after the news crews have gone. Sometimes they speak. Sometimes they simply share the silence. Lucy knows the look, the one Olivia wears like a bruise. It is the same one she saw in her sister, before she vanished, the same one in her own bathroom mirror after every case that went cold. She offers no promises, just presence, a hand, a voice, a relentless reminder that survival is not a crime, and healing does not need to happen alone. Therapy helps slowly. Olivia sits in a circle with other survivors, a man who hasn't slept through a night since the rescue, a girl who cuts her sleeves to the wrist so no one will see the scars, Jessa, whose laughter is brittle but growing. They share memories that don't fit in the light, unthreading nightmares together. The group becomes a lifeline, proof that suffering can be spoken, that the dark can be mapped with words. Home is different now, too. Olivia's mother hovers, loving but uncertain, wanting to fix what can't be fixed. There are fights over food, over curfews, over Olivia's need to walk alone by the water. Sometimes Olivia lashes out, her anger too big for her skin, then breaks down in her mother's arms, both of them weeping for time, lost for the girl who left and the woman who returned. But as the weeks stretch into months, something begins to mend. Laughter returns, hesitant but true. Meals become less about hunger and more about ritual, a way to reclaim the ordinary. They begin new traditions, Sunday walks in the park, planting a garden out back, sharing books and stories late into the night. Lucy remains the quiet axis around which Olivia's world slowly spins. She helps Olivia navigate interviews, medical exams, the endless bureaucracy of survivorhood. She drives Olivia to appointments, sits in the back of the courtroom as Lang and his accomplices are sentenced. She keeps her promise, calling every few days, sometimes just to listen, sometimes to sit in silence. Over time, their bond deepens. They talk about fear and guilt, about how hard it is to believe the world can ever be safe again, about hope as an act of stubbornness. The healing is uneven. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but Olivia refuses to be defined by the pain. She begins to speak at support groups, telling her story not as a tale of horror, but as one of endurance, of choices made when all hope seemed lost. The first time is hard. Her voice shakes, her palms sweat. But when she finishes, there are others waiting to thank her, to tell their own stories, to ask for help. The world is full of survivors, and Olivia is determined that none of them should be alone in the dark. Inspired by the circle of strength around her, Lucy, her mother Jessa, and the other survivors, Olivia works with Lucy to create the North Star Collective, a nonprofit that offers counseling, legal aid, and rapid response for families of the missing. The first meetings are small and chaotic, but within months, the group grows. Survivors volunteer. Families find hope in the network, in the knowledge that their pain is seen, their voices heard. Lucy trains police officers on trauma-informed search tactics. Olivia mentors new survivors, teaches them how to navigate the media, how to advocate for change. The first vigil for the missing is held on a rainy Tuesday. Dozens gather by the lake, candles in trembling hands, photos of loved ones pinned to their coats. Olivia stands at the front, hands shaking, voice strong. She invites others to speak, and a mother describes her daughter's laugh. A brother remembers the way his sibling loved the snow. Lucy stands at the edge, watching the crowd, pride and ache battling in her chest. When Olivia steps down from the stage, a dozen people move to embrace her. Her mother is there, Lucy too, both anchoring her in the now. Olivia's hands are cold, but her eyes are bright. The pain is still there, always will be, but so is something bigger, a kind of trust, a faith that what is broken can be mended, that what was stolen can sometimes in small ways be reclaimed. Late that night, Olivia sits on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind move through the trees. Lucy joins her, coffee in hand. They talk softly about the future, about the ones still missing, about what it means to fight and to forgive. Olivia smiles for the first time in days. "I want to live," she says, the words simple, luminous. "Not just survive. I want to be the reason someone else doesn't give up." Lucy nods, her own voice thick. "You already are." The dawn comes quietly, and Olivia at last does not look away. She breathes in the soft morning, her scars part of her, but not all she is. Around her, the world is broken, but beautiful. And for the first time, she believes she can belong to it again. The porch light glows the house behind her, full of warmth and promise. And Olivia rises to meet the day. Not alone, not afraid, but strong enough now to help lead others home. The evening air over British Columbia is damp and humming with the hush of distant rain. It's been 3 months since the raid at Glacier Lake. Life for most is sliding back toward its old grooves, Olivia working with survivors. Lucy teaching police cadets the families of the lost gathering under banners of hope. Yet for all the smiles and press releases, there's a current of unease beneath every day. A subtle unspoken dread that won't be washed away by sunlight or applause. The forest, when the wind shifts, still seems to whisper of things not found, names not called, and evil not yet caged. Lucy feels it most when she's alone. She sits in her office late rain, tap-tapping the glass stacks of files arranged like tombstones on her desk. Her phone is full of contacts, her calendar dense with meetings and follow-ups. But when the building empties and the city outside grows still, she can't help but replay every mistake, every name unsolved. She thinks of Olivia and the others, all they survived and all they lost. Some nights, she dreams of the raid snow exploding with gunfire, Lang's face twisted with defeat, and behind it all, a dark shape always just out of focus, a presence she can't quite chase down. It's a detail in the evidence photo that finally cracks the world open again. Lucy is sorting through digital files for a training session when her cursor hovers over the final batch of images, the ones from the storage bunker shot by a forensics tech who'd stayed calm even as the walls around him were smeared with horror. She's seen them all before. But something tugs at her, an itch she can't scratch. She zooms in on one, then another. There, reflected in a splintered mirror nailed to a cinder block wall, is a shape, a man tall and lean, standing half in shadow behind 2 of the prisoners. He wears a hat brim low, no insignia. His face is indistinct, a smudge of features. She flips through the rest. He's there again in the edge of another frame, lurking by the steel door. Never facing the lens, never in focus. Her heart thrums with a cold, electric anxiety. She had reviewed every list, every ID. Lang's lieutenants, the logistics crew, even the cooks and cleaners. But no one matches this shape. She sends the images to forensics, asking for enhancements. She pulls old witness statements, reading for the 100th time the memories of women who remembered a voice too calm. A man who never used his name. She searches the database for similar patterns. Cases unsolved, missing persons, still vanished names that might be fake. There's nothing. Only the suspicion that something vital slipped through their fingers. The next day, a small padded envelope arrives at the precinct unsigned. The return address is a dead drop in Vancouver, one Lucy recognizes as having been used by an informant network years ago. Inside, there's only a single photograph printed on glossy paper, high resolution, clearly recent. The shot is of the hospital parking lot. Olivia stands with Lucy, laughing in the sun. In the blurry background, leaning against a battered white van, is the same tall man from the evidence photos, brimmed hat pulled low, gloved hand, clutching a disposable coffee cup. Lucy's pulse roars in her ears. She flips the photo over. There's a note, block letters, printed in a neat, slow hand. The game never ends. See you soon. Her hands shake, breath catching in her throat. She studies every angle, scans for fingerprints. Nothing. No DNA. No trace. She orders security footage from the hospital, reviews it frame by frame. But the van's plates are unreadable, the man's face obscured at every angle. She issues a bolo, be on the lookout, but part of her already knows this will go nowhere. This is someone who knows how to move in shadows. That night, the city feels sharper. The lights colder, and every small noise on the street outside makes Lucy's nerves snap like dry twigs. She sleeps with her phone on loaded pistol within arm's reach. The next morning, another message arrives, this time a folded piece of heavy stationery slipped under her office door. The ink is a deep blue, the penmanship precise. Just one line. You found some of us, not all. The hunt isn't over. Lucy's world tightens contracts around the possibility of new danger. She calls Olivia, warns her not to be alone, insists on extra security for the survivors and their families. Olivia tries to sound calm, but Lucy hears the quiver beneath her words. She recognizes it in herself. The feeling that victory is an illusion, that every celebration is only a pause before the next chase. In the days that follow, she and her team double-check everything. Old hotel records, bus routes, flight manifests, security logs from the night of the raid. They find nothing, not a single lid, as if the hunter has melted into the bones of the city. And always at the edge of her sight, Lucy senses him, a ghost behind every pane of glass, a pair of eyes watching from the crowd, the flicker of a hat brim ducking into a train station at dusk. It infects her dreams. She wakes sweating, certain she heard a footstep outside her window, that someone watched her cross the street or linger in the cafe. Once returning home late, she finds her door unlocked, a mistake she tells herself, but she searches every closet, every shadow gun drawn, and heart racing. Meanwhile, the media's attention has already begun to fade. The world wants happy endings, not uncertainty. Reporters now chase newer disasters. Politicians promise reform, the missing get their vigils, and for most people, Glacier Lake becomes a cautionary tale, a symbol, not a wound. Only Lucy, Olivia, and the survivors still feel the teeth of what's unresolved. What waits behind the next knock, the next unmarked car, the next photo in the mail? Late one night, Lucy sits at her kitchen table. The anonymous note spread out in front of her, the photo of the shadow man pinned to her board beside Lang's mugshot. The rain taps on the window. The city outside is a field of shifting dark and light. She breathes slow and steady, telling herself she won't be ruled by fear. But even as she closes her eyes, she knows it isn't over. The monsters learn, adapt, hide in plain sight. Somewhere out there, in the hush of a midnight street or the glare of an airport terminal, the last hunter is watching, waiting. Lucy makes a promise, silent and ironclad, to every survivor and every family still searching. She will not stop. Not until every shadow has a name, every face a reckoning. The hunt will never end, but neither will her resolve. And in the darkness, as rain falls over the city, and the forests, the game's last secret player slips away unseen, but leaving behind a chill in every room. A reminder that even when the truth is dragged into the light, some things are made only of darkness and will not go easily into morning. The snow in Glacier Forest is ankle-deep, new and bright beneath a sky just clearing from storm. Olivia stands at the edge of the woods alone, except for the wind, moving through the pine boughs, clutching the worn envelope she's carried since her rescue. The others, the families, the survivors, the police wait at the tree line. Their presence a quiet strength behind her. She opens the letter, unfolding the creased pages with hands that still remember darkness, and begins to read aloud. Mark's words spill out rough and trembling, written before he made his final stand. If you find this, Liv, it means you made it. I always believed you would. I want you to promise me something. Don't let what happened here be the last thing you remember. You're more than what they tried to do to us. Your hope, your love. You're the reason the world keeps turning. If you ever feel alone, know I'm still with you somewhere in all this white and sky. Live, live. Not just for me, for all of us. Her voice cracks, but she keeps reading, shoulders trembling in the hush. Help the others if you can. Shine a light for those still lost. The world is full of shadows, but you're proof there's something stronger. As she finishes, the forest is silent, then the first sounds of life, a sob, a laugh, the quick shuffling of boots as loved ones close the distance. Olivia steps into her mother's arms, then turns to embrace Jessa, then the next survivor, her circle growing with each connection. All around them, families hold tight faces wet with tears of mourning, of relief, of gratitude for second chances. Lucy stands apart for a moment, watching the scene, survivors' families, volunteers, law enforcement, all bound now by a story of pain and defiance, by the refusal to surrender to darkness. It is not a perfect scene. There are scars that will never heal, absences that ache with every sunrise. But as hands are joined, candles lit, stories shared in trembling voices. Something new is built, a network of courage, a living promise. Side by side, Olivia and Lucy gather the group and begin to speak not of what was lost, but of what can be done. Olivia vows to continue the fight to honor the missing support the found push the law further. They tried to break us, she says, voice ringing through the trees, but we built something stronger in their place. We are more than what they took. Lucy shares her own promise. For every name still unspoken, every truth still buried, we will keep searching. Evil doesn't vanish because we look away. It ends when we refuse to let it hide, when we refuse to give up. The camera drifts wider, families and survivors moving forward through the snow toward a line of parked cars and police cruisers, the scars of the forest behind them, the expanse of the world ahead. Hope is not a finish line, but a beginning. The story not a closed circle, but a living thread spun from the worst the world can give and the best it can recover. In the last light, Lucy pauses at the edge of the trees, boots buried in snow. She looks to the horizon, Glacier Lake glittering cold, an endless sky streaked with fire and blue. Her eyes are steady, jaw set, breath visible in the sharp air. Behind her, Olivia tucks Mark's letter close to her chest, and all around the crowd moves forward together. Lucy's thoughts ring clear. This is not the end. It never was. As long as someone stands up, as long as someone remembers the dark, we'll never win. She turns, leads the way through the forest, her silhouette tall and resolute in the falling dusk, a beacon, a promise, a story unfinished, its final lines still waiting to be written.